My name is Jimmy Obuya, and I'll be facilitating this session together with the other colleagues who have helped me with some of the research in the background, what was in the background. We want to really appreciate everyone who has found time. We know this is voluntary time, and there's a lot of things that are going on, but it's for the passion that you have for the initiatives that you drive and that you pursue, or the communities that you serve, that has made you also, go towards this extent, and we really appreciate that. We also appreciate the support from NCCK, the National Council of Churches of Kenya, who have provided us with this platform as part of their efforts, and also really support such kind of activities and initiatives. So, and of course, we will not go without summoning and remembering God's blessings and the divine the divine support that we receive, without which we wouldn't be able to meet, or even to just be in a community of sharing, a community of volunteering, and a network where people are able to exchange ideas and processes. Now, we'll be meeting for roughly maybe 1 hour. We plan to be very strict on time, with time, and so to aid us in presentation, I've prepared a presentation that has 15 slides. In between, I'll make the presentation, and then after the presentation, we can have some time for Q&A, and maybe, if possible, a small exercise by those who are here. And then after that, we can share the way forward. We'll share some templates and everything else. And then any issue that comes up that requires further follow-up and support, we can always look for other opportunities to cover them. So thank you very much. If you want to, and you can introduce yourself, your name or your initiative or your organization, and your location in the chat. It's voluntary. I think it's part of also just making sure that we know each other and everybody here. So, because if we start doing a round of introduction, it will take us more time than necessary. So, the session today is about tips on proposal development, and we want to start where everybody else, perhaps, what will make or break your proposal, or your proposal is the way you identify and articulate the problem or the issue that you want to address. It's very important that you get it right from the first place. If you cannot articulate the problem in a way that other people who are external to your environment or to your context can understand, then you're in trouble. And that's why when we were going through the whole area of proposal writing and development, we thought that I think the most important aspect we could start with is this actual aspect of defining the problem, articulating it, and also we share a very simple framework that I believe, if and everybody adapts, it can really help us to go further. So the title of the presentation is Telling Winning Stories, Strengthening Proposal Writing with the SNAP framework. The framework that we're going to talk about today is, we're calling it the SNAP framework. SNAPs, as you know the definition of SNAP later on, but I want you to remember this word. Every time you're thinking about articulating the problem or bringing about your issue, remember this word SNAP. It will help you to be able to check through what you're thinking, what you're figuring out. Thank you for those who are doing the introductions. Now, the objectives: number 1 is to understand the SNAP framework for proposal writing. Number 2 is to strengthen problem identification using story and need. Number 3 is how to apply the framework through interactive examples. So we'll try as much as possible to address these 3 aspects within the presentations, and hopefully we'll be able to run with it. So we go straight to defining what is this SNAP. What is SNAP? SNAP is an acronym for Story, Need, Answer, and Proof. Story, Need, Answer, and Proof framework is a compelling tool for improving proposal development, especially for small and medium-sized initiatives and organizations, or even organizations, no matter what your size is. We've had some one-on-one sessions with some of you, and I've hinted a bit on this framework in trying to help analyze and help you locate the the problem and the need and the solutions that you're offering it, and we've seen that it has really been helpful. So the SNAP framework helps to structure your proposal narrative in a way that connects emotionally and logically with other stakeholders and potential funders while grounding your case in evidence. It's very important because most of the initiatives are grounded in the community and are there to solve a need that has been identified by people who are human beings. Our design and our approach is to provide problems that are connected to solving human problems. There are so many other problems that are happening outside there in the world. But what we're coming together is that we want to intervene on behalf of people, or we want to articulate a certain problem which people are already experiencing, and not to be surprised, they're already actually having solutions, or have already started ways in trying to address those needs. So we want to connect. How do you help outsiders also connect with what you're doing, what you're talking about, with the problem or the issue? You need to connect with them emotionally and also with logic, so that the evidence that you provide serves as a basis and as the grounding for your intervention and also your invitation to them to come and join you. It's very important that we get this right and clear from the word go, that you need to structure your narrative, because most of the time a proposal is a written document that tries to articulate your issues. You'll not be able to meet with these people face to face. Sometimes it's when you meet with somebody face to face, when somebody sends you a text message asking you for a favor or for some assistance, you may ignore it. But if you meet that person face to face and they come and or they call you and they talk to you, or you have a means through video conferencing or somehow you're able to talk to them, then you can be able to connect emotionally. So how do we write? How do we make sure that this piece of paper, that perhaps maybe you've written it from an initiative that you're having in Moranga, in Kenya, or in Kampala, Uganda, you send it to somebody who is in Egypt, who has never come to your country or to your village or to your locality, and they're able to connect emotionally with the issues that you're talking about. So that is where small and medium-sized initiatives miss it when it comes to articulating the issues. We know the problem very well. We can articulate it very well. We can see the need that is there in existence in the community, but how do we express it in such a way that it connects? If this person comes to your village or to your locality or to your project size or to your city or to your town or even to your home, and they see these things for themselves, they'll actually be compelled to act even without you asking. But most of the time, the reality of proposal development and writing is that you will not be able to meet, and perhaps you will never be able to meet the people who are reviewing your projects or even who are funding your activities. So this framework, the story need answered proof framework, is one of the tools that we want to center it and to master it as people who are writing and developing proposals for our organizations and initiatives, so that we can be able to connect emotionally and logically with other stakeholders who are external to our environment, and they can be able to connect to the evidence that we share. So thank you very much for those who joined. We've just started. We're just sharing the framework that we're talking about. Feel free at your own discretion to introduce yourself, your initiative, the location that you're running a thing, so that at least the others can can be blessed by knowing and knowing you and benefiting from your presence. So we are going to discuss how you can apply SNAP to enhance the problem identification and articulation aspects of proposal writing, along with practical tips for each element. So that will be our focus for the next maybe 20 minutes or so. And then after that, we can be able to see if we can have some practical time to have a conversation around these issues. So the first part of SNAP is the S. S stands for the story. The story helps to paint a human-centered contextual picture of the problem. You need to connect the problem to a vulnerability that a human being is facing, because humans can relate to humans in the first instance. I know in some contexts people relate perhaps to pets or to other beings more than humans, but your story needs to be centered on a human issue or vulnerability and contextual picture of the problem. You paint a picture by building the context and helping this person to be able to see or to imagine or to visualize what you are talking about or what you're explaining as your problem through the lens of a human being. it's very important that we have this in place and that this one we get this one right. So what does this mean? This means that you're using storytelling to ground the problem in real life experiences. Real life experiences from the stories of the people who are facing this issue. How vulnerable are they to this issue? It's very important that it comes from their story. Sometimes we tend or try to interpret what we think somebody is facing and we get it wrong because our context, when we visit those areas, we don't live with them every day. They're the ones who are encountering these issues. So based on what they tell us and our biases, we try to interpret and say, this is their problem. Their problem is actually housing. They don't have, they don't have access to warm water to shower, or they don't have access to nutritious food or something like that. But the focus, and I'll keep on emphasizing on this, focus on the people or communities affected and set the scene in a way that others can visualize and empathize with so that they can relate with it. If you're talking about water shortage, if you're talking about access to education, if you're talking about access to maternal health services, they should be able to visualize what you're talking about and compare maybe with their context. How does the same issue manifest where they are and how is it seen? So using storytelling, and the storytelling should be based on the stories that they tell you themselves. That's why it's very important that we try to, for example, to speak on behalf of others, to avoid speaking on behalf of others, or even to try to avoid the words like amplifying their voices. I'm representing them. Let them tell their stories. Perhaps what you can do is that you can echo what they are saying. You can echo or amplify their voices so that their voices can go much further and higher than where they can get a hearing, and a hearing that can translate into solution, inviting them into a partnership for a solution. So you start with a real case or composite story that typifies the issue. So the issue has to be captured within a story that somebody can relate with. And then describe where and how the problem occurs. Locate it. It has to be located somewhere so that now the context comes in. And then use local voices or quotes to add authenticity. Local names, local people, how they organize themselves, and such kind of things. Use those kind of tips and tactics to to add authenticity, and then avoid generic or overly technical language. Sometimes we try to use language that is so technical that is very difficult to interpret or somebody to connect with, or generic language. And NGOs, big NGOs have a big problem with this. Empowerment, capacity building, endangered, mainstreaming. No, let the stories, from the stories that they tell you, you'll get the language. Once you get the language, you articulate it, you echo it. Your role is to echo what they're saying. If you've been in a space where the voice, you shout something and then you hear the echo going around, that's what we're talking about. And then the voice gets a hearing. The reason for you elevating that voice or echoing that voice or those stories is so that they can get a hearing. And the hearing, they've gotten a hearing when that hearing invites partnership to work with those people on the issues. So what is can you look at an example of this? For example, in the Madara informal settlement of Nairobi, 13-year-old Amina walks 2 kilometers each day to fetch water, missing school frequently. Her story is not unique. Many girls in her community face similar challenges, leading to high dropout rates. That is high school dropout rates. So, you see, this is a real or composite story based on an individual who is actual, who has a name, who has an age, and who lives somewhere in a context. They can be located. Their troubles and struggles are shown. A 13-year-old walking 2 kilometers every day to fetch water. And what is the cost of this activity? They miss school frequently. As a young girl who's supposed to be in school, you're not even talking about other vulnerabilities that she gets along the way. So you quote, you link the emotions, and you talk about lived experiences. And also you look local voices. Here we are projecting the local voice of Amina. And we are saying that her story is not unique. Many girls in her community also face similar challenges, leading to high dropout rates. Okay, that's an example of the story aspect. That's the first one. The The second one is on the need. The second acronym in our SNAP framework is need. Clearly define the underlying need or problem. Okay, it's very important to clearly define the underlying need or problem. What are we saying? What does this mean is that move from the story to a broader analysis. Define the scale, causes, and urgency of the problem using reliable data and frameworks. So we are talking about the vulnerability this person is facing. You've identified the challenges they are facing, the issue Amina is facing. You've described her context. It's informal settlement. Everybody can now, if somebody wants to know what an informal settlement is or a slum setup is, they can be able to visualize that. Now, the story has already been framed. Now you define the scale, the causes. What is the scale of this program? How big is it? We're talking about, we mentioned many girls go through the similar things. It's not a situation that is unique to Amina. There's so many other people are facing this. The causes, the urgency of the problem using reliable data and frameworks. So here, there's something called triangulation. Any story that you talk about needs to be proved or needs to be corroborated, at least in three ways. First of all, from the person who's facing the issue. When they talk about it, when they relate to it, the story can be backed by data. They can be backed. There's data that actually corroborates or actually reinforces what they're talking about. If you go to the community, there's actually somebody who has gone ahead and collected the data. So distinguish between the symptoms and the root causes. The symptom, for example, can be a headache. But if you're having frequent headaches and you keep on treating them and they keep on coming, then that is a symptom. If you have fever, that is a symptom. What are the root causes? So you have to go deeper into the issue to find what is the root cause of this headache. You have to go into diagnosis and analysis. And the analysis can be found from verifiable official data and research that has been conducted on that very issue, and this is available. So whatever issue that you are addressing in your initiatives, make sure that you're able to identify and pin it to verifiable data that has been researched. So you can use local and recent data from government reports and studies and similar initiatives, and you can show how the problem aligns with larger development goals. That if this problem is not solved, because we talked about the human-centeredness of this problem, if it is not solved, then as humanity will not be able to meet a collective goal that we've set. If it's national development goals, county development goals, the global development goals and all that. And then also the need should help you identify gaps in existing interventions. We're not saying that there are no interventions available to reach people like Amina. What we are saying is that you are gaps, and that gap is your kicker. That is your secret bullet. If you're not able to identify a gap based on the need you've talked about, then it's very difficult to convince somebody that the problem requires the intervention or their partnership with you. So these gaps that you identify in existing interventions are what will help you now have an edge as somebody who's developing and designing the initiative. So for example, how do you articulate this? I want to share an example. So according to the 2023 Ministry of Education report, 45% of girls aged 10 to 16 years old in urban informal settlements drop out of school due to unpaid domestic labor, including water collection. Despite government efforts, infrastructure gaps persist in over 60% of these communities. So, you articulated it here very well. There's data from the Ministry of Health, of Education on school attendance and dropout, and also the data gives the reason. The reason why Amina is going to fetch this water, surprisingly, is not even because perhaps she's getting this water for domestic use and also for sale, so that the family can earn some income. So, but the gap is this: despite government efforts, infrastructure gaps persist in over 60% of these communities. Notice here that the gap has been articulated as infrastructure gap. So if you're designing your intervention and you want to convince people to partner with you, you have to address this gap. Don't deviate from the gap. Many people get tempted to do everything, and I've talked to some of the groups, and we see this weakness. You want to address everything. You say that she's vulnerable to GBV, she's vulnerable to abuse. It's about girl-child empowerment and parent care programs, the parents' needs. But where is the gap? So the gap can be realized through a process of research and analysis. So infrastructure gaps exist in over 60% of these informal communities. So the root cause versus symptoms. The symptom is that this girl is dropping out of school to go and fetch water. For the it's actually child labor, which includes collection. But the root cause, what is the root cause? Is that there's infrastructure gap. So that is the root. What Amina is doing is the symptoms, but the root is very clear. So you've put the data plus the context. You've acknowledged that there's existing responses, but there are gaps. And then, of course, you've aligned it with priorities. And of course, you can also go ahead and get local data. Okay, so we've identified we've identified the story, we've articulated the need. Now we are going to the answer. The answer is what you're proposing. This is your original idea. This is your proposal. This is who you are. This is what you're saying that you're able to do, because you've identified, you've articulated, you've told of the story, you've told of the gap through the need, and now your answer. You present your solution as a credible and context-responsive response. What does this mean? You introduce your project as a logical and tailored response to the problem. The problem is based on the gap. Show why your organization is positioned to deliver it effectively. Okay, we know everybody else is doing other things, but you, because you've seen this gap, and how have you arrived at knowing this gap? Because of number 3 in the tips, you've shown community involvement in shaping the response. You've had a process of engaging the community, analyzing the issues through an assessment process, and the context responsive response is based on that. So you clearly state your theory of change or logic. How do you want this problem to be solved, or how are you suggesting the answer? Okay, explain your solutions, why this solution fits the local context, and then demonstrate how it can be scaled or how it has potential for learning. Because if this issue is affecting this community, it affects others. So can we look at an example of a statement? So you can say that our initiative will install community water points and train local youth groups to manage them. By reducing the time girls spend collecting water, we aim to increase school attendance. This approach was co-designed with local leaders and aligned with the country's water access strategy. Very simple and straightforward. You identify the gaps as infrastructure. Okay, if you can just go back to the need. You identify the gaps. Despite government efforts, infrastructure gaps persist. Remember that now is the problem. Okay, it is not all those things that you think that are glorious and are beautiful and to talk about and everybody likes to present in workshops and everything else. Our initiatives will install community water points and train local youth groups to manage them. That talks about sustainability, that talks about community ownerships, and that talks about independence. And then your logic or your theory of change. By reducing the time the girls spend collecting water, we aim to increase school attendance. Very simple. We are talking about, if we reduce the time from 2 kilometers to 200 meters or even to 100 meters, then Amina will be able to collect the water, because we are saying as part of the context and the norms is that young children have a responsibility and a duty to go and collect water. It can be seen as a form of domestic labor, child labor, whatever it is you want to call it, but that is not our intervention for now. What we are saying is that we don't want to get her out of that context. We don't want to do harm. We don't want to introduce something that will antagonize the relationship or the dynamics in the family. What we're saying is that we want to reduce the time girls spend collecting water. And when we reduce that time, we'll increase school attendance. And if our girl is in school, then she's safe and she has an opportunity to thrive. And then we're talking about this approach was co-designed with local leaders and aligned with the country's water access strategies. The local leaders are involved. So it is tailored intervention, the logic is there, the co-creation with communities is there, and it fits with your capacity. And then finally, the last part of the SNAP acronym is proof. Support your solution with evidence and credibility. This is where you talk about proof is who you are. Why are you the best person to solve this? It's because of who you are. So what does this mean? You back up your proposed solution with evidence that it works or can work, and demonstrate organizational readiness and partner support. So include results from pilot projects or similar models. present monitoring and evaluation plans and learning mechanisms, highlight team experience, partnerships, and endorsements. People that you've worked with, people that have done this, people that can actually say that you know what you're talking about, and include testimonials, evaluations, or letters of support from the government, from the community leaders. You can use short clips and videos. You can ask. There's so many ways right nowadays to collect evidence, especially with the advent of with the advances in communication and technology and IT. So let us look at an example. So you can talk about in 2022, our pilot in Kibera reduced school absenteeism among girls by 37% in 6 months. An external evaluation by XYZ for consultants validated the approach. We have MOUs with 2 community-based organizations and the county water office. So you've done a similar project in a similar context somewhere else, and you have the data to prove that particular intervention worked. So you have evidence of effectiveness, you have the organizational track record, and you have the partners M&D plan. You have partners, you have an M&D plan, you have a risk mitigation strategy, and you have testimonial, pilots, and evaluation. So this actually grounds. It's proof that you're somebody. These are the things that you did or you are part of, or you actually did it yourself and you've done it before. So most of the times, if you're providing a solution, it should be something that you've done before, or that you're doing, or that you've partnered somewhere and is able to be replicated in what you're doing. Sometimes we identify a problem, we articulate the issue, we propose the answer, but we don't have proof, because we're thinking, if somebody did it, why not us? If that women group started table banking and they succeeded, I can also start it in my village. Instead of working with those groups to come to your village and talk to you, you're instead doing it yourself. So, in summary, what are we talking about? The SNAP element, the first one, the story humanizes the problem using real stories and local context. The need is how you analyze the problem. You provide data and align with policy gap. You analyze the problem based on the stories of vulnerability and challenges faced by the human beings who are people facing that problem. It has to be problems that are faced by human beings. The answer, you describe your solution. What are you proposing based on the gaps you've explained? There are so many angles to a specific issue, but there's just one one thing that you can do. So you explain the fit, co-creation, and uniqueness, and the proof. You show it will work. You use evidence, evaluation, and partnerships, so that you can tell this person who is in Egypt, or who is in China, or who is in Korea, or who is in Canada, who is in England, this is the proof that this will work, because it has worked somewhere else. And when they dig into the data, when they do research, they find it's credible. So we're about to conclude. Why does SNAP matters? Partners and donors fund stories with evidence, not just ideas only. You can have a brilliant idea, but if it's not grounded on evidence, then nobody is very interested in doing that. SNAP combines logic and emotion. It connects with people. It connects because somebody can actually try to relate. There are people that we know, our friends and people that we engage with. When you start a story about yourself, even before you finish, they pick it up because they connect a similar thing that happened to them. If you want to say, for example, in high school, I remember I was in the lab, we were doing a chemistry practical, and when I was trying to suck the chemicals using the pipette, I swallowed some of it, and it messed my lips because it was corrosive. Before you finish that, they say, even may remember, it happened to me, and it was a big issue, and that's how I dropped chemistry, and I've never liked it. So they've picked it up. But the idea is that you've been able to help them connect. So you combine logic and emotion through stories of people. And of course, it helps small organizations compete through clarity and structure. And this is a very important thing. Big organizations are unable to compete to get the clarity and structure that small initiatives can bring out. Because you have the context, you can move fast, you have the connection with the communities and the people, they know you, they can relate to you, so you can articulate these things better. But what do? We tell these stories, we collect them, we give them to other people, they run away with them, and then they get all the resources. When they get the resources, 60% of the resources they retain, 40% they bring to the community in form of handouts, and then we end up with the same problems through and through. And that cycle can never stop if that's what we're talking about. So there's an interactive. I want us to maybe go for an interactive session. We had proposed maybe to take some 5 minutes or so to talk out to do this exercise. But I'm thinking maybe what you can do is that if you can think of a project or idea or a real issue your organization is working on, and draft a quick story need paragraph using Snap, and then share it. So maybe I can have this as a homework because I want us to have some time to interact and maybe just give feedback and responses to these presentations. Okay, so maybe if you can take a screenshot of this or jot it somewhere, or maybe I can send it to you later. We can have a one-on-one on this. Just share it so that we can have an activity. If you can be able to do this right now as we're in this call, then fine. But I want to pause there and maybe invite any feedback, reactions, or comments from all of us. You can raise your hand, you can unmute your mic, and maybe you can just share your experience, your story, and then you can have this session. And then after that, we can do a bit of a wrap up and discuss the way forward. Thank you very much, everyone.